The worst part about heartbreak isn't the pain of losing someone. It's the feeling of not even knowing who you are anymore. The phone call came at precisely 6:43 p.m. The timing was so ordinary, so mundane, that it felt like the universe was mocking me. I could hear the rain outside, heavy, relentless, tapping against the windows like 1,000 whispers of regret. I let the phone ring for a moment, staring at the glowing screen, watching the name that I had once dreamed of seeing on my phone. Noah. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. The moment when I would hear his voice again after all these years. But when the words came, they were nothing like the words I had longed to hear. Ella. His voice was low, strained, as though he had been carrying the weight of something too heavy for too long. I clenched my fists in my lap, my heart pounding. Noah, I whispered, as if saying his name could somehow fill the emptiness that had plagued me for 5 years. There was a long pause, and in that silence, I felt the years between us stretch out, like a chasm I couldn't bridge. Why now? I finally asked, my voice trembling despite my best effort to stay calm. He exhaled sharply, the sound almost drowning in the static of the line. I don't know. But I need to talk to you, Ella. I need to explain. I could feel the room closing in around me as his words sank in, the weight of them pulling me deeper into a spiral of confusion. Explain. How could he explain what he had done to me? How could he possibly undo the years of silence, of heartache, of unanswered questions that had driven me to the edge of despair? I stared at the clock on the wall, watching the seconds tick by as if they held the key to everything I had ever lost. Why now? Why had he waited until now, when I had finally convinced myself that I could move on? That I could let him go? I pressed the phone harder against my ear, as if somehow the physical contact would bridge the distance between us. What is there to explain, Noah? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. The words feeling like a weight that had been dragging behind me for far too long. You left, you walked away. And you didn't look back. There was a long pause. I could almost hear him taking a breath, the sound of him gathering his thoughts, perhaps wondering how to justify the irreparable damage he had done. And then he said something that made my heart stop. I never stopped thinking about you, Ella. Not for a single day. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the words, trying to escape the truth that gnawed at me. But you left. The words slipped out before I could stop them, thick with anger and sorrow. You didn't even fight for us. You walked away, and I had to rebuild my life, rebuild myself from nothing. And now you want to come back and pretend that everything is fine? The pain surged through me, a familiar ache, one I thought I had buried. I had rebuilt myself, piece by piece, after he left. I had taken the broken pieces of my heart, the remnants of a life I had built with him, and I had slowly, painfully put them together again. I had learned to live without him, to breathe without him, to exist without him. But in that instant, I realized how much I had never really let go. I could hear the soft sound of Noah's breathing on the other end of the line, as if he too was trying to process the magnitude of the words that hung between us. I know, he said quietly, finally. I know that I hurt you. I know that I left without any explanation. But I made a mistake, Ella, a huge mistake. And I need to make it right, make it right. I wanted to scream, to tell him that there was no making it right, that the damage had been done, that the years we had lost would never come back, that the trust he had shattered would never be rebuilt. But I didn't. Instead, I found myself asking a question that I never thought I would ask. Why did you leave? There was a long silence before Noah finally spoke again. His voice, when it came, was filled with something I couldn't quite identify. Regret? Guilt? Or something deeper? Something I couldn't place. I was scared, Ella, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I was scared that I couldn't be the person you needed me to be. I was scared that I would hold you back, that I would drag you down. I thought leaving would make things better, but all I've done is ruin everything. I felt my breath catch in my throat, the words he spoke resonating deep within me. For years I had asked myself the same question. Why did he leave? And now, after everything, after all the pain, he was telling me the truth. I wiped away the single tear that had slipped down my cheek, my fingers trembling. But you didn't even try, Noah. My voice cracked with the weight of everything I had never said, everything I had buried so deep that I thought it would never surface. You just left. Without a word. Without a fight. I was selfish, he admitted, his voice raw with emotion. I was a coward. I thought I was protecting you by leaving. But I see now. I only hurt you more. I exhaled sharply, my heart heavy with the weight of his admission. For so long I had believed that he had simply moved on, that he didn't care. But now, hearing him say those words, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of something I had long buried. Hope. Could we really go back? Could I ever truly forgive him? Could we rebuild what we had, or was it lost forever? I didn't know. I didn't know what to feel anymore. As the conversation wound down, neither of us knew how to end it. The silence on the line was thick, heavy with all the things we hadn't said, all the years we had lost. Finally, it was Noah who spoke. Ella, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not asking you to forgive me right away, I just want a chance to make it right. A chance. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of his words settle in my chest. A chance. That was all he was asking for. I didn't know if I could give it to him. But I didn't hang up the phone, because, despite everything, despite all the pain, I wasn't ready to let him go, not yet. We'll see, I whispered, the words hanging between us like a fragile thread. And for the first time in 5 years, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, our story wasn't over. The heart is fragile, it cracks, it breaks, and sometimes it heals, only to be shattered again. I hadn't expected him to reach out. Not after all this time. Not after the way he had left, without a word, without a fight. But here he was, his voice now a thread in the tangled mess of memories that I had spent years trying to forget. I wasn't ready for this. For him to walk back into my life like he hadn't destroyed everything we once had. The evening after our conversation, I found myself lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The storm from earlier had passed, but the storm in my mind raged on, waves of anger, confusion, and longing crashing inside me. Why had he called? Why now, after 5 years of silence? I ran my fingers through my hair, feeling the weight of his words, and the weight of everything I had been holding in for so long. It had been a lifetime ago. But it still felt like yesterday. The hurt, the betrayal, it was as fresh as ever. The night Noah left was a night I would never forget. It had been a week since I noticed the change in him. The distance he had been putting between us. I didn't understand it at the time, the small things that shifted. The way he no longer smiled at me the way he used to. How he would look past me, as though I were nothing more than a shadow in his life. But that night, when he came to me with that look in his eyes, distant, torn, as though he had already made up his mind, I realized the truth. I still remembered the way my hands had trembled as I held on to the last piece of us. Noah, please. What are you saying? My voice had cracked, the desperation in my words bleeding through. I'm sorry, Ella, he had said softly, barely above a whisper. But I can't do this anymore. I love you, but I'm not the man you need me to be. What do you mean? I had asked, my chest tightening. We've been through everything together. I don't need a perfect man, I just need you. But he had shaken his head, the sorrow in his eyes cutting deeper than any argument I could have made. I don't want to hurt you, but I'm doing it anyway. I need to leave. I need to find out who I am without you. I had tried to hold on, tried to make him see how much we meant to each other, how much we had invested in our future. But no matter how much I begged, how much I cried, he had walked away. The phone call echoed in my mind long after Noah had hung up. I hadn't expected him to reach out like that. In the back of my mind, I had always imagined that the day would come when he would finally want to talk. But I never expected it to happen like this. And part of me wasn't sure I was ready to let him back into my life. Into the fragile life I had rebuilt after his departure. My fingers traced the rim of my coffee cup as I sat in my small kitchen, staring at the phone. I could still hear his voice. Ella, I need to explain. Explain. What was there to explain? Noah had been the love of my life. I had given him everything, my heart, my trust, my future. And he had left me with nothing but silence. The scar was still there, invisible but jagged, pulling at the edges of my heart. I decided to go to the place that had once been ours. A place that still held the ghosts of all we had been. The old apartment we shared. The door creaked when I pushed it open, the familiar smell of the place clinging to the walls like dust. It hadn't changed. The same faded couch, the bookshelf lined with our favorite books, the same broken window that had always let in a draft. I walked through the rooms, touching things I hadn't dared to touch in years. The pictures on the wall, the little trinkets we had collected over the years. Every object seemed to hold a piece of us, a fragment of a love that once seemed invincible. I paused in front of the window, the one that overlooked the city street below. The view had once been so beautiful to me, so comforting. We would sit here together, our legs tangled in the blankets, talking for hours about everything and nothing. It was here I had told him I loved him for the first time. Here that I had thought we would build our future. But that future had crumbled. I couldn't keep running from this. I couldn't avoid him forever. Noah had reached out for a reason, and I had to face it. The only question was, what would I do with this second chance? I texted him, my fingers shaking as I typed the words, "Meet me at the park tomorrow, 2 p.m. The reply was instant. "I'll be there." The next day, I stood under the large oak tree where we had spent so many afternoons together, waiting for him to arrive. The wind blew softly, the leaves rustling above me, but it didn't offer the comfort I thought it would. Instead, I was still filled with that same uncertainty, the same unease I had felt ever since he had walked away. When he arrived, Noah looked like a man who had aged 5 years in the time we had been apart. The same blue eyes, but now shadowed with regret. The same confident posture, but now with the weight of uncertainty. He looked like a stranger, but his voice when he spoke was still the one I remembered. "You wanted to talk?" I asked, my tone as calm as I could manage. He nodded, stepping closer. "I never should have left, Ella. I know that now." His voice was low, as if the admission itself was a weight he had been carrying for far too long. I crossed my arms, staring at him, searching his face for any sign that he had truly changed. That he understood the weight of what he had done to me, to us. "You're right. You never should have left," I said quietly, the words cutting like a knife. "But you did. You made your choice, Noah. And now, I have to live with it. I had to live with it." He looked away, guilt creeping into his eyes. I know I can't undo the damage I've caused, but I'm asking for a chance to make things right. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I need to try, Ella. I can't keep living with the weight of what I did." I stood there, my heart in my throat, feeling like I was standing on the edge of something massive. I had spent so much time pretending that I didn't care. Pretending that I had moved on, but hearing him speak like that, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, shattered the walls I had so carefully built around my heart. I didn't know if I could forgive him. I didn't know if I could ever go back to the place we had been before. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep pretending that nothing mattered. That I hadn't loved him with every piece of my being. "I don't know what to say," I said finally, my voice breaking. "You hurt me, Noah. You broke me. And I don't know if I can ever go back to the way things were. But maybe we can figure out how to move forward." He reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and I let him take mine. It wasn't an answer, not yet. But it was a start. Sometimes love isn't about fixing each other, it's about accepting the broken pieces and learning to build something new. The park where we met felt different now, colder, quieter, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath, waiting for us to say something, anything that would break the silence. We stood at the edge of the lake, the water reflecting the pale light of the setting sun, ripples forming from the breeze, a reminder of how time had passed since that last day we had been here together. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. The moment I would finally confront him. The moment I would demand the answers I had been holding on to for so long. But, as I looked at Noah, his face full of regret, his eyes carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken words, I realized something that took me completely by surprise. I didn't want answers anymore. I wanted to understand why I hadn't been enough. I wanted to know what had happened to us. To the love we had shared. That had seemed so perfect in those early years. But the thing was, I didn't know if I was ready to hear the answers. And in that moment the rawness of it all, the pain, the anger, the deep loneliness I had buried, began to rise up, threatening to consume me. Noah shifted beside me, pulling me from my thoughts. "Ella." His voice was quieter now, laced with a tenderness I hadn't heard in so long. "I'm sorry. I don't know how to make up for what I did, but I need you to understand that walking away from you wasn't easy for me. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong." I took a deep breath, letting the cool evening air fill my lungs, and tried to focus on his words. But it was difficult, so difficult to hear him speak when all I could remember was the silence he had left me with. The silence of his absence, the silence of his decision to walk away without a second glance. I finally turned to face him, my voice low but firm. "Why, Noah? Why did you leave? Why didn't you fight for us?" The question was simple, but it felt like a punch to the gut. His shoulders tensed, and he took a step back, his eyes dropping to the ground as if he couldn't face me. "I was scared," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I was scared of failing you. Scared that I wasn't good enough for you anymore. I thought if I left, if I walked away, it would make everything better. But all I did was hurt you." His confession hit me like a wave, crashing over me with the force of everything we had been through. Scared. That was the word he used. It made sense in some twisted way. Fear had always been a part of us, but it didn't explain the years of silence, the broken promises, the way he had left without ever looking back. I swallowed hard, trying to push the emotions back down, trying to maintain some sense of control. "But you didn't even give us a chance. You left me, Noah. You left me alone with all the pain, all the questions. You didn't even think about how I would feel." There was a long pause. The wind picked up, the rustling of the leaves the only sound that filled the space between us. Noah's face was pale, his features strained, as though the weight of his own regret was finally becoming too much to bear. "I was selfish," he admitted, his voice thick with guilt. "I wasn't thinking about you. I wasn't thinking about how you would feel. I was thinking about how I felt. I was scared of being trapped, of losing myself in something I wasn't ready for. But I see now how wrong I was." His words hung in the air like an echo, and for a moment, I was paralyzed by the weight of them. The man I had loved, the man I had believed would be my future, had left me because of his own fears, his own insecurities. And now, after everything, after all the years of silence and distance, he was asking me to believe in him again. I didn't know how to answer him. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him that it was too late, that I couldn't just erase the years of pain and loss. But another part of me, the part I had buried for so long, longed to forgive him, to heal. The silence stretched on, the weight of it settling between us, heavier than any words could convey. Finally, Noah spoke again, his voice softer this time, almost hesitant. "Ella, I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I know it's not that simple, but I'm asking for the chance to make it right. To show you that I'm not the same person I was when I left." I shook my head, tears welling in my eyes. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Noah. I don't know if I can ever forget the way you walked away from me, from us. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to give this a chance. If you're willing to show me that you've changed." For the first time in what felt like forever, Noah's eyes softened with something other than regret. There was a flicker of hope, a glimmer of the man I had once known, the man I had once loved. "I'll show you, Ella, I promise. I'll show you every day, for as long as it takes." The days that followed were a strange mix of awkwardness and tentative connection. We spent time together, slowly, carefully, learning to navigate the distance that had grown between us over the years. It wasn't easy. There were moments when the hurt was so sharp that I could feel it like a knife in my chest. And there were moments when I could see Noah, not as the man who had hurt me, but as the man I had once loved so deeply. But every conversation we had felt like a small victory. Every smile, every laugh, every quiet moment where we found ourselves in sync again, it was a reminder that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild something from the ruins. One afternoon, as we sat in a small cafe near the lake, Noah reached across the table and took my hand. It was the first time he had touched me like that since he came back into my life. His touch was warm, gentle, as though he was afraid of breaking something fragile. "I know it's not easy," he said quietly, his thumb brushing over the back of my hand. "And I know that I don't deserve your trust right now. But I want to earn it, Ella. I want to earn your forgiveness." I looked down at our hands, the connection between us tangible, almost comforting. "I'm not sure I can forgive you," I said honestly, meeting his eyes. But I want to try. I want to believe in us again. I just need time. Noah nodded, his eyes filled with understanding and something deeper. Hope. I'll give you all the time you need. We didn't rush it. There was no magic moment, no instant fix. It was a slow, painful process of rebuilding, of letting go of the old wounds, and finding new ways to connect. We went on walks, sat in quiet cafes, and shared stories about our lives in the years we had been apart. And each time, I could feel myself softening, the walls I had built around my heart slowly starting to crumble. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of doubt, moments when I would pull away, afraid of getting too close. But Noah was patient. He never rushed me, never pushed me to forgive him. He simply showed up. And for the first time in a long time, I found myself trusting him again. There is no simple path to healing. There are only the steps we take, unsure and stumbling, toward the person we wish we could be. The air was thick with the scent of rain as Noah and I stood by the lake, our hands still brushing against each other in that tentative, almost hesitant way. I had never realized how much I had missed the simplest things, like just standing side by side, feeling the presence of the person who used to be everything to me. It was almost like I was seeing him again for the first time, and in that moment, I could feel the pain and the hope fighting within me, each pulling me in different directions. The evening sky stretched above us, a delicate gradient of orange and purple that reflected off the calm water. The world felt quiet, as though everything around us had paused, waiting for us to figure out what to do next. I never thought I'd be here again, Noah murmured, his voice low, almost as if he were speaking to himself. He leaned slightly against the wooden railing of the dock, looking out at the ripples in the water. I thought I had lost you for good, that there was no way to undo what I did. I stood next to him, my gaze drifting to the water as I tried to steady the whirlwind of emotions inside me. There were so many things I wanted to say, but the words always got caught in my throat, tangled between the past and the present, between the pain and the hope I was so afraid to allow myself to feel. You did lose me, Noah, I said quietly, the truth spilling out before I could stop it. You left me with nothing but silence. You didn't just leave me, you left everything we built, everything we promised, in ruins, and I had to pick up the pieces on my own. The weight of my words hung in the air, sharp and heavy. But there was something different about saying it aloud. For so long I had buried my pain, pretending I was fine, that I could survive without him. But I wasn't fine, and the truth had always been there, waiting for the right moment to be spoken. He turned to face me, his eyes searching mine as if he could find the answers to his own questions there. I know, Ella, he whispered. I can't change the past, I can't fix what I did. But I can be here now, I can try. I want to try. For a long time I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was trapped between the weight of everything he had taken from me, and the possibility of what we could still have, if only we could let go of the past and move forward. But I didn't know if I was strong enough to do that. I had spent years trying to heal, trying to piece myself together after the wreckage Noah had left behind. And now, here he was, asking for a second chance, asking for a rebirth of something that had been broken beyond recognition. Could we really start over? Could I trust him again, after everything? I don't know if I can just pick up where we left off, I said finally, my voice trembling slightly, the rawness of my emotions leaking through. I can't erase everything. I can't forget how much it hurt, how much you made me doubt myself, made me wonder if I wasn't enough. Noah's face tightened, and he stepped closer to me, his expression filled with regret. I was an idiot, Ella. I was afraid that if I didn't walk away, I'd destroy you, destroy us. But now, I see that the only thing I destroyed was the chance we had. His words were a salve, but they weren't a cure. I couldn't simply let go of everything. I couldn't pretend that time would heal everything, that just because we were standing here now, things would suddenly make sense. We sat down on the damp grass near the edge of the lake, the coolness of the earth seeping through the fabric of my jeans, grounding me in this moment, in this conversation. The quiet between us was comfortable but heavy, as if we both knew we were standing on the edge of something monumental. What happened, Noah? I asked, my voice softer now, as I looked at him. Why did you leave? What was it that made you think walking away was the right thing? Noah shifted beside me, his fingers tapping nervously against his leg, a habit I remembered all too well. I thought I was protecting you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I thought that by leaving, I could give you the space to grow, to find yourself, to not be tied down by me. I thought I was doing the right thing, but all I did was hurt you. And I'm sorry, Ella, I'm so damn sorry. The sincerity in his voice hit me like a tidal wave. But even as I listened, even as I saw the man I once loved sitting before me, guilt and sorrow written all over his face, I couldn't help but wonder if it was too little, too late. The world seemed to hold its breath, and in that moment I realized something. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. Maybe it wasn't about pretending it didn't hurt. It was about learning to carry the weight of what had happened, and choosing to move forward with the knowledge of that pain, but not letting it define who I was or what I could be. I exhaled slowly, letting the breeze wash over me. I'm not sure I can forgive you yet, Noah, I said, my voice steady, though my heart ached with every word. But I can't keep living in the past either. I don't want to hate you anymore. I don't want to carry this pain anymore. Noah reached for my hand, his touch warm and steady. There was no rush in his movement, no desperate need for me to forgive him immediately. Instead, it was a gentle offering, an olive branch. Then let's take it slow, he said, his voice quieter now, a little uncertain. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't expect you to forget. But I'll be here, Ella, every step of the way. And I'll prove to you that I'm worth it. That we're worth it. For the first time in years, I felt a small spark of hope. It wasn't an all-encompassing feeling. And it wasn't a promise of anything more than the beginning of something new. But it was a start. A fragile, tentative start. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since he had walked back into my life, and I saw the man he had become. The man who had made mistakes but was willing to try again. The man who had once held my heart in his hands and had broken it, but who was now willing to build it back up. We'll see, Noah, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. We'll see if we can make this work. We'll see if we can rebuild us. The hardest part about rebuilding something you once thought was lost is learning to trust again. Trusting yourself, trusting the other person, and most of all, trusting that you can heal from the brokenness. The days passed slowly after that afternoon at the lake, each moment filled with the weight of what we had shared, and the uncertainty of what we could become. Noah's presence lingered, but it was more than just his physical closeness. It was the constant reminder that the past still existed, waiting just beneath the surface, ready to rise up at any moment. Our meetings were becoming more frequent. Each time we met, we found ourselves sitting together in a fragile silence, talking a little, sharing a lot, and yet still unsure of how to navigate the complex web of emotions that defined us. The thing was, I wasn't sure what Noah wanted from me. He wanted a second chance, yes. But what did I want? The rain had returned in the days that followed, a soft mist that clung to the earth, making everything feel damp and heavy. I found myself wandering through the streets, sometimes with Noah beside me, sometimes alone, but always feeling the pull of what we used to be, and what we were trying to become. It was a Sunday afternoon when we found ourselves at the coffee shop we used to frequent, the small one tucked away on a side street, its windows always fogged with the warmth of people lost in their own little worlds. The scent of freshly ground coffee beans filled the air, mixing with the faint scent of rain on the pavement outside. The quiet hum of conversation, and the clink of mugs created a comforting atmosphere, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were just two people having a casual conversation, but nothing was ever casual between us. Noah sat across from me, his eyes lingering on me in a way that made me feel both exposed and understood, a vulnerability I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. His fingers drummed on his mug, a nervous habit I hadn't seen in a long time. Do you ever regret it? I asked suddenly, the question slipping from my lips before I could stop it. The question had been there for days, swirling in my mind. The unspoken truth. The fear I had never voiced. Noah looked up, his brow furrowing slightly as he met my gaze. There was no hesitation in his eyes, only a deep and almost painful honesty. Regret? He repeated, as if tasting the word. As if it had never truly been part of his vocabulary before. I regret a lot of things, Ella, more than you'll ever know, but the one thing I don't regret is loving you. That's the one thing that kept me going all these years. I stared at him, feeling a mix of emotions churn in my chest. Loving me. It felt like a lifetime ago that I had believed his love was a promise. A promise that we'd make it through, no matter what. But that promise had been broken. Then why did you leave? The question was louder now, a desperate plea for answers I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. Why did you walk away and leave me to pick up the pieces of something you destroyed? The air around us thickened with tension, and for a moment, Noah didn't speak. His eyes dropped to his coffee, his fingers gripping the mug with an intensity I hadn't seen before. I could see the pain in him, the sorrow that he had buried so deep it was almost suffocating him now. I was weak, he said softly, almost to himself. I didn't think I was good enough for you, I thought I was holding you back. And the worst part is, I thought that by walking away, I could protect you. I was so afraid of being the reason we didn't work, but all I did was push you away. His words cut deep. They were raw, but they didn't erase the pain. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to tell him it was okay, that everything would be fine. But it wasn't okay. It would never be okay. You could have stayed, I said, my voice thick with emotion. We could have figured it out. But you didn't stay. You left me in the middle of it, Noah, alone, and now you're asking me to trust you again? The anger in my voice surprised both of us, and for a moment, I could see the hurt flash across Noah's face. I know, he said, his voice cracking with emotion. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to trust me right away, but I need you to know that I would give anything to go back and do things differently. I don't expect you to believe me, but I want to show you, Ella. I want to show you that I've changed. The conversation shifted, a delicate turn from the raw confrontation we had been tangled in, to something softer, more vulnerable. We spoke about the years that had passed, the lives we had lived apart, the ways we had changed. It wasn't easy. It never was with us. But as we spoke, the space between us started to feel smaller, the distance that had kept us apart starting to shrink. You're right, Noah said, after a long pause. I can't just expect you to forgive me, I have to earn that. I have to show you that I'm not the man who left you. I'm not the man who ran away from our love. And I'm not the same woman either, I replied quietly, my hands trembling slightly as I traced the rim of my coffee cup. I've spent so much time hating you for what you did, but I've also spent so much time hating myself. I don't know how to trust again, Noah. Not just you, but anyone. Not after what happened. Noah nodded slowly, his eyes filled with understanding, a depth of empathy I hadn't expected. I get it, Ella, I know. And I can't fix everything overnight. But I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm worth trusting again. I didn't know if he could fix what had been broken. I didn't know if I could ever truly trust him again. But I knew one thing, he was trying. He was putting himself out there, vulnerable and raw, in a way he hadn't done before. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to hope. The days that followed were a mix of cautious optimism and lingering doubt. Noah and I met regularly, at the park, at the coffee shop, on walks through the city. But each time we met, it felt like we were slowly putting the pieces of something that had shattered back together. There were moments of lightness, moments where I would laugh at something he said, where the old familiarity would return. But then, just as quickly, the weight of our past would return, reminding me of everything we had lost. One afternoon we sat together in the park, the sun shining down on us, warm and inviting. The light filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground. It felt peaceful, almost perfect. A quiet moment where we could forget, even for a second, the weight of everything we had been through. Noah turned to me, his face soft and open. I know it's not perfect, he said, his voice tender. But do you think we can build something from all this? Something new, something better? I looked at him, my heart still wary, still uncertain. I don't know if we can, Noah. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to take that first step with you. Noah smiled softly, his eyes filled with a hope I hadn't seen in years. That's all I ask, Ella. One step at a time. And in that moment, as the sun set behind us, I felt the first real flicker of something new. A chance, a possibility that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. The hardest part about love isn't finding it. It's learning how to let it grow again once it's been broken. The days that followed felt like a fragile dance, a careful waltz between old wounds and the promise of something new. The air was thick with the weight of everything unsaid, everything that still lingered between us. Each moment I spent with Noah felt like a step forward, but also a reminder of the distance that had once stretched between us, and still felt like a chasm too wide to cross. I could feel the scars of the past on my heart, each memory of betrayal, of anger, of helplessness, still fresh beneath the surface. It was hard to imagine a future without these memories. Even harder to picture myself walking hand in hand with Noah again, as though nothing had changed. But something inside me stirred, a flicker of hope, of something that might be worth fighting for. We had spent so many years apart, and yet, here we were, trying to put the shattered pieces of us back together. Every word Noah spoke, every look he gave me, seemed to remind me of the person I used to be, the girl who loved him without reservation, without fear. I wanted to be her again. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could be. It was late one evening when we found ourselves walking through the quiet streets of the city. The streets were mostly empty, save for a few late-night stragglers, and the light from the street lamps flickered above us, casting long shadows on the pavement. It was the kind of evening where everything felt suspended, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to change. Noah's hand brushed against mine as we walked, the warmth of his touch sending a ripple of electricity through me, something I hadn't felt in years. But the feeling was short-lived, as quickly replaced by a coldness that settled deep inside me. I didn't know if I was ready for this. Not yet. Not when the weight of my past was still clinging to me. Ella. Noah's voice broke through the silence, quiet but laced with uncertainty. You've been quiet lately. What's on your mind? I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can let go of everything that happened between us. I don't know if I can ever forget what you did. Noah stopped walking, turning to face me with a serious expression. He took a step closer, his face soft with concern, but there was something in his eyes, an eagerness to understand, to help me bridge the gap between us. I don't expect you to forget, Ella, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I never could. But I need you to understand that I've changed. I'm not the same person who walked away from you. I'm here now. I'm here because I'm ready to make it right. His words, so simple and full of raw sincerity, hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the man standing in front of me was the same person I had once loved. The same person who had promised me forever. But how could I trust him again? I swallowed the lump in my throat, feeling the weight of everything we had gone through, everything I had tried to bury deep within. I want to believe you, Noah, I do. But it's hard. It's hard to forget the way you made me feel, the way you left me. It's hard to forget how much I cried, how much I hurt, when you walked out of my life like I didn't matter. The words were out now, raw and jagged, and the pain of it all, the hurt, the loss, the betrayal, came crashing back, a flood of emotions I had tried so hard to suppress. I could see Noah's face soften, the guilt and regret filling his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I saw the vulnerability in him, the same vulnerability I had once loved. I know, he said softly, stepping closer and gently cupping my face in his hands. I know, Ella. And I would give anything to take that pain away. I would give anything to go back and change what I did. But I can't. All I can do is show you, every day, that I'm not the person I was when I left. For a moment I closed my eyes, allowing his touch to sink into me, to remind me of the warmth we once shared. But even as his hands rested gently on my face, I could feel the walls inside me rising, walls built to protect me, to shield me from the pain of losing him again. I didn't know if I could tear those walls down, not when everything felt so fragile, so uncertain. How do I know? I asked quietly, my voice trembling slightly. How do I know that this time is real? That you won't walk away again when things get hard? Noah's hands dropped to his sides, and for a brief moment, I saw the flash of pain in his eyes. You don't, he said softly, you don't know. But what I can promise you is that I'm not going anywhere. I'm here, Ella. I'm here, and I'm going to fight for us. I'll fight for you, for everything we were, and for everything we can still be. I let out a shaky breath, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. I wanted to say something, wanted to tell him that I could feel it too, that I could feel the old flame, flickering to life inside me, despite the years and the hurt. But instead, I just nodded, too overwhelmed by everything we had shared in that one simple exchange. The weeks that followed were a mix of awkwardness and tenderness, as Noah and I began to navigate the new dynamic between us. There were moments when I found myself staring at him, trying to reconcile the man he had been with the man he was becoming. It wasn't easy, and the past often felt like an anchor, dragging us down with its weight. But each time we spoke, each time we shared a moment, I could feel the cracks in the walls I had built starting to heal, just a little. One evening, Noah suggested we take a trip to the beach, a place we had often visited together in the past. The air was crisp, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filling the space between us. It was a place where we had shared so many memories. And for the first time since his return, it felt right. We stood there, side by side, watching the waves roll in, the weight of the world momentarily forgotten in the peace of the moment. Noah turned to me, his face soft with something deeper than regret, something I hadn't expected to see. "I know we can't go back to what we had, Ella," he said quietly. "But I think we can build something new." I looked at him, my heart in my throat. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," I admitted softly, my voice full of uncertainty. "But maybe we can try." Noah reached out and took my hand, his touch gentle and steady. The warmth of his fingers intertwined with mine, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to believe in something new, something that could grow from the ashes of the past. The hardest part of healing is knowing when to let go of the past, and when to hold on to the pieces of it that still matter. The days passed in a blur of quiet moments and tentative steps forward. Noah and I were learning how to live with the weight of what we had both endured, the years apart, the betrayal, the silence. But as we spent more time together, I couldn't help but wonder, could we really rebuild this? Could we find our way back to each other despite everything? The question lingered in my mind constantly, like a low hum that I couldn't shake. I could see Noah trying, I could see his effort, but the cracks in our relationship were not so easily fixed. His words, his apologies, had opened something within me, something I had closed off for so long. But what if I couldn't trust him again? What if the damage was too deep to heal? I sat in the cafe we had visited together only a few days ago, staring out the window as the rain began to fall again. The city looked different in the rain, dim, quiet, a little more introspective. A place that for once felt like a reflection of my own thoughts. The sound of the coffee machine whirring in the background barely registered as I lost myself in the thoughts of what had happened, what was happening now, and what might happen next. "Ella." I didn't need to look up to know who it was. The familiar warmth of his voice cut through the haze of my thoughts, drawing my attention like gravity pulling at a distant star. Noah slid into the chair across from me, his expression soft but serious, his eyes filled with the same emotion I had seen in them countless times before. Guilt, regret, hope. "You're quiet today," he said gently, his voice low, careful, as though he were unsure of what to say. I shrugged, forcing a small smile, though it felt foreign on my face. "I guess I'm still thinking," I replied, my fingers playing with the edge of my coffee cup. "Thinking about everything, about us, about whether or not this is even possible." Noah's gaze softened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of vulnerability that I hadn't noticed before. It was as if he too was questioning the future, wondering if the past was something we could ever truly outrun. "I don't have the answers, Ella," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that was far too heavy for a conversation about coffee and rain. "I don't know if we can ever go back to what we were. I don't even know if we should. But I do know this, what I feel for you, that hasn't changed. I'm still here. And I'm still willing to fight for us." The sincerity in his words hit me like a wave, and for the briefest moment, I felt the walls inside me shift, just enough for the light to peek through. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could fight too. I wasn't sure I had the strength to take the leap of faith Noah was asking of me. The question hung in the air between us like a thick fog, neither of us daring to fully confront it, but both of us feeling its presence. What would it take to rebuild? What did we need to do to move forward without the weight of the past hanging over us? I took a breath, steadying myself, knowing that this conversation would shape everything that followed. "I'm afraid, Noah," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the hum of the cafe. "I'm afraid that I'll never be able to trust you again. That no matter how hard we try, we'll always be stuck in the past, and it won't ever be the same." The honesty of my words startled both of us, but there was no turning back once they were out in the open. I had spent so long burying that fear, pretending I was fine, pretending I could just move on. But the truth was, it was hard. Harder than I ever imagined it would be. Noah reached across the table, his hand trembling as he gently placed it over mine. His touch was both comforting and heartbreaking, a reminder of everything we had been, everything we had lost. "I get it," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm not asking you to trust me right away. I'm not asking for you to forget the past, or to pretend that nothing ever happened. But I need you to understand that I'm not the same person I was when I left. I don't know how to prove it to you, but I'm here. And I'll show you every single day that I'm not going anywhere." His words hit me harder than I expected. It was what I had been waiting for. But it wasn't just about the words. It was about whether or not I could believe them. "I don't know if I can," I said softly, my voice breaking with the weight of my fear. "I don't know if I can ever forget what you did. The way you walked away. I can't just erase that from my memory. I can't pretend like it didn't happen. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you the way I did before." Noah's face tightened, his eyes reflecting the pain of my admission. But he didn't pull away. Instead, he held my gaze, his expression soft, understanding, patient. "I know," he said simply. "And I'm not asking you to. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I want to earn that trust. It's not going to happen overnight. But I'm willing to take the time, Ella. However long it takes." We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity, the tension between us both a weight and a comfort. I was trying to make sense of everything he had said, trying to figure out if I could take the leap and trust him again, if I could allow him back into my life without the constant fear of him walking away again. But the truth was, I didn't know. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive him, to heal from the hurt he had caused. I didn't know if I could ever feel whole again. Noah seemed to sense my hesitation, the way my shoulders were drawn up, the way my hand trembled beneath his. He let out a quiet sigh, almost as if he were trying to push the weight of the situation aside. "You don't have to decide right now, Ella," he said gently. "You don't have to give me your trust today, but I'm asking for the chance to earn it, to show you that I can be the man you need me to be." I looked down at our hands, the warmth of his touch grounding me. There was no rush, no urgency. And yet, everything inside me screamed that we couldn't go on like this. We couldn't keep circling around each other, afraid to take the next step. We had to face the truth, face the fear that had been holding us both back. "I want to believe you," I said softly, my voice thick with emotion. "I want to trust you again. But I need time, Noah. I need time to heal, to forgive, and to let you back in." Noah nodded, a small understanding smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I'll give you as much time as you need, Ella. But I won't give up on us. Not now. Not ever." We stayed in that cafe for a long time after, talking about everything and nothing. We spoke of our shared memories, the small moments that had once defined us, our favorite books, our favorite songs, the way we would spend hours lost in conversation until the world outside faded away, the small, intimate things that made us who we were. I still didn't have the answers. I still didn't know if I could trust him again. But as I looked at him, I realized that maybe, just maybe, we could try. Maybe we could start small, and build from there. As we walked out of the cafe, our hands brushed together once more. This time, I didn't pull away. In the end, love isn't about rewriting the past. It's about understanding the story we're creating together, and having the courage to continue writing it, even when the pages are filled with scars. It was late in the evening when I found myself standing on the balcony of my apartment, the cool breeze ruffling my hair as I stared out at the city below. The world seemed so vast, so unchanging, and yet everything in me had shifted. Everything had changed in the weeks since Noah had come back into my life. I had spent so much time trying to move on, to forget the love I had once had. And yet here I was, standing at a crossroads, not sure which direction to take. The past was like a shadow that followed me everywhere I went. And in some ways it always would. But could I forgive him? Could I let go of the hurt? My fingers traced the edge of the railing, and I let the silence of the moment wash over me. The city was quiet tonight, the kind of quiet that made everything feel still and eternal. But I wasn't still. I hadn't been still for a long time. The phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me from my thoughts. I pulled it out, and there on the screen was a message from Noah. The words were simple, but they carried more weight than I could ever put into them. "I'm here, Ella. Whenever you're ready, I'll be waiting. Take all the time you need." It wasn't the first message he had sent like this. He had been patient, careful, and understanding. All the things I had wished he had been when he first walked away. But now, everything felt more complicated than I could have imagined. I didn't know if I was ready to face him again. I didn't know if I could bring myself to trust him, or whether I could forgive him for the years of hurt. The words, the promises he had made. Did they mean enough to overcome the ghosts of the past? I walked back into my apartment, my heart heavy with the weight of my indecision. I had spent so many years running from this moment, pretending that I could heal without him, pretending that I could move on, but I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. I loved him. I still loved him, despite everything that had happened. The next morning, I found myself walking through the familiar streets, heading toward the park where Noah and I had spent so many hours talking, laughing, and dreaming. The park still held the echoes of our past, like a shrine to what once was. When I saw Noah standing near the fountain, waiting for me, a rush of memories flooded my mind. His smile, the warmth of his hand in mine, the way he used to look at me like I was the only thing that mattered. The man in front of me now was different. His eyes were older, more worn, and yet they still held the same spark of warmth and hope that I had always seen in him. He saw me coming and his face softened, as if a weight had lifted from his shoulders. Without a word, he stepped forward, closing the distance between us. The hesitation in his movements was so familiar, a reminder of the man I had once known. But I wasn't sure if I still knew him. "Ella." His voice was a whisper, barely audible against the soft rustling of the leaves around us. His hand reached for mine, but I held back, not sure if I was ready to let him back in, to trust him again. "I've been waiting for this moment, for us to talk, for you to tell me what's in your heart." I paused, looking up at him, trying to read the depth of the emotion in his eyes. "Noah," I said quietly, my voice trembling with uncertainty. "I don't know if I can ever truly forgive you. I don't know if I can ever forget what happened, how much you hurt me." Noah took a step closer, his gaze never leaving mine. There was no anger in his eyes, no defensiveness. There was only regret. "I don't expect you to forget," he said softly, his voice filled with sorrow. "I can't erase the past. But I want to show you that I'm here. And I'll stay here, no matter how long it takes, until you can see that I've changed. Until you can see that I'm not the person I was." For a moment, I stood still, trying to process everything. The weight of his words, the sincerity in his voice, felt like a heavy tide pulling me under. Could I let go of the past? Could I trust him again, after everything that had happened? I thought back to the days when we were inseparable, when every moment was filled with joy, when we spoke of our future with a certainty that seemed unshakable. But then came the silence, the years of unanswered questions, the pain of wondering whether I had been the one who wasn't enough. The ache still lingered, but as I looked at Noah, I realized something. The only way to move forward was to let go of the fear. "I've been holding on to so much anger, Noah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, the truth of it finally hitting me. "I've been holding on to the past, to the hurt, because I thought it was the only way I could protect myself. But I've been wrong. I've been wrong about everything." Noah's face softened, and for a moment, I saw the man I had once loved. The man who had made me laugh. The man who had made me feel safe. He stepped closer, and this time, I didn't pull away. "Ella," he said softly, his voice filled with tenderness. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to leave you behind. But I see now, that I've lost so much in the time we've been apart, and I'm willing to fight for us." I closed my eyes for a moment, the weight of his words crashing over me. Could I fight too? Could I rebuild something from the ashes of our past? The road ahead was uncertain, filled with potential for more pain, but it was also filled with the possibility of healing. I took a deep breath and met his gaze. "I don't know what the future holds, Noah," I said softly. "But I know that I want to try. I want to see if we can build something new, if we can find our way back to each other." Noah smiled, a small, tentative smile that spoke volumes. He reached for my hand, this time without hesitation, and I let him take it. Then let's build it together, he whispered, squeezing my hand gently. As I stood there, hand in hand with the man who had once broken my heart, I realized something. We couldn't go back to what we had before. That love was gone, and it could never be resurrected. But we didn't need to go back. We just needed to take the first step forward, one step at a time. Together. And for the first time in years, I felt something that had long been missing. Hope. Hope for the future. Hope that we could rebuild something from the ruins of what had been. And maybe, just maybe, we could find something even stronger than what we once had. Some journeys don't end with a clean slate. Sometimes, they end with acceptance. Acceptance of what was, what is, and what might still be. The weeks passed, each one a slow but deliberate step towards something that neither of us could predict. The road ahead wasn't straight, and there were still moments of hesitation, of doubt, of pain. But in the quiet spaces between those moments, there was the glimmer of something new, something fragile but real. Noah and I had decided not to rush things. After all, the past wasn't something we could simply erase. It had shaped us, broken us, and rebuilt us in ways that no amount of time could undo. But what we could do, what we had to do, was learn how to carry the weight of our shared history, without letting it crush us. I still hadn't fully forgiven him. I still hadn't fully let go of the hurt, of the betrayal, of the years spent wondering where I had gone wrong. But every day, I felt myself opening up just a little more. Every time we spoke, every time we shared a quiet moment together, I saw a glimpse of the future we might still have. It was a Saturday evening when I found myself walking alongside Noah, down the same path we had walked years ago. The path by the lake, where we had shared our first kiss, our first argument, our first promise to each other. It felt like we were walking back in time, retracing the steps of a life we had lost. The world around us was calm, the only sound being the crunch of the gravel under our feet and the distant rustle of leaves in the trees. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, peaceful, yet full of untold stories. Stories of us. Do you ever wish we could go back? I asked suddenly, the question slipping out before I could stop it. My heart still carried the weight of everything we had been through. Everything we had lost. Noah looked at me, his expression soft but thoughtful. I don't think we can go back, Ella. We've changed. We've been through too much. His voice was heavy with the realization that our past was no longer something we could simply return to. But I don't think that's what we need. What we need is to move forward, to build something new, together. His words settled between us, neither comforting nor painful. Just a truth we had both come to accept, even if it wasn't easy. The past had shaped us, but it wasn't our future. We had to decide what we wanted that future to look like. Together. As we reached the end of the path, we stopped by the old wooden bench where we had spent so many afternoons, talking about our dreams, our fears, our future. The bench was weathered, the wood worn with age, but it still held the remnants of all we had once shared. Noah sat down first, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes fixed on the water before him. I sat beside him, close enough to feel the warmth of his body, but not quite close enough to feel completely safe. The distance between us, though smaller now, still felt significant. I know you've been struggling with this, Noah said, his voice low, almost hesitant. I know that it's not easy for you to let me back in. I understand that. But I want you to know something, Ella. He turned to face me, his eyes searching mine. I will never stop showing up for you. I'll never stop trying to make things right. No matter how long it takes. I met his gaze, the intensity of his words pulling at something deep inside me. You've already said that, I whispered. You've said it so many times. But I'm still not sure. I'm still not sure if I can ever fully trust you again. If I can ever forgive you for everything. The pain in my voice was raw, and it startled me to hear it so clearly. It had been so long since I had truly allowed myself to feel everything I had buried inside. The years of loss, of anger, of abandonment. Noah didn't look away. He didn't flinch. Instead, he nodded. A quiet acceptance in his eyes. I know, and I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I'm asking you to give me a chance. A chance to show you that I can be the man you deserve. A chance to build something new. I took a shaky breath, feeling the weight of his words pressing down on me. I don't know if I'm ready, I said, my voice trembling. But maybe we can try. The moonlight bathed the lake in a soft silvery glow, casting long shadows across the water. For a moment the world felt suspended, as though time itself had stopped just for us. Noah reached out, his hand warm and steady in the cool night air, and I didn't pull away. I let him take my hand, my fingers curling around his, feeling the warmth of his touch seep into me. I didn't know if I could fully forgive him. I didn't know if we could ever go back to what we had before. But as I sat there with him, hand in hand, I realized that maybe it wasn't about going back. Maybe it was about finding the strength to move forward, together. We didn't speak for a while, just sat there, watching the stars reflect on the water. In that silence, I felt something shift. A quiet understanding, a mutual desire to move forward. We had both hurt each other, in different ways, and yet here we were, willing to try again. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But maybe it didn't need to be. We stood up from the bench, still holding hands, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of the past holding me back. The fear, the doubt, the pain, they were still there, lingering in the corners of my mind, but they no longer defined me. They no longer had the power to keep me frozen in place. As we walked back toward the path, side by side, I felt a quiet certainty settle in my heart. We were different now. We had been broken, yes, but we had also learned and grown. And maybe that was all we needed. The chance to rebuild from the ground up, piece by piece, day by day. I don't know where we're going, Noah, I said, my voice steady now, filled with a new sense of resolve. But I'm willing to find out. Together. He smiled, the warmth in his eyes almost overwhelming, and he squeezed my hand gently. Together, he echoed, his voice full of a quiet, confident certainty. And in that moment, I realized that the future was ours to shape. We weren't going to erase the past. But maybe, just maybe, we could build something even more beautiful from what we had learned. Sometimes the hardest part about love isn't the act of falling into it. It's the act of climbing out of the holes you've dug together, and finding a way to walk side by side again. The days that followed the quiet night we spent by the lake were a delicate balance between vulnerability and strength. I had always thought that the hardest part of love was giving it. But I was wrong. The hardest part was accepting it again after it had been broken. Noah and I were still learning each other in ways we had never expected. After all that had happened, the quiet moments, the late night conversations, they felt like whispers of a life we could rebuild. We didn't talk every day about the past. It was a delicate subject, still painful, and often, I could see the guilt in Noah's eyes when he spoke of the years he had left me. I knew he would never be able to fully undo the damage, but I also knew that he was trying. And that effort, however small, meant more than anything. One evening, as the sun began to dip beneath the horizon, I found myself in the same cafe where Noah and I had first truly opened up to each other. The same familiar smells of coffee, the soft hum of the espresso machine, and the background chatter of other patrons filled the air. But today, there was something different. I sat at the table near the window, looking out at the soft glow of the streetlights below, feeling the weight of the moment. Today marked a month since we had agreed to move forward, to rebuild what had been lost, but we hadn't really spoken about the future. We had been too focused on healing the wounds of the past. Noah walked in, as he often did now, looking just a little bit more relaxed than he had the first time we met here, like the burden of guilt was finally starting to ease from his shoulders. His smile was warm, but his eyes, those same eyes that had once been filled with fear and doubt, were filled with hope. I didn't think I had ever seen Noah like this. He had always been someone who wore his emotions on his sleeve, but now, it felt like he was standing tall, carrying himself with a sense of purpose. "Hey," he said softly, as he sat down across from me, his eyes scanning my face for any sign of hesitation. I smiled, though it was small, and nodded, acknowledging his presence as we sat together in a comfortable, yet still uncertain silence. "How are you feeling?" Noah asked, his voice steady but filled with a quiet, almost nervous sincerity. The question seemed to hang in the air between us, and I knew it wasn't just a simple greeting. He wasn't asking how I was feeling about the coffee or the weather. He was asking about us, about where we stood. I hadn't been sure about how to answer that question, not just for myself, but for him. How could I explain how I felt when the emotions inside me were still swirling like a storm, unpredictable and fierce? But, despite the fear, I had a sense of clarity now that I hadn't felt before. The truth was simple, even though I had struggled to admit it for so long. "I'm afraid," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the soft clink of coffee cups and the ambient noise around us. "I'm afraid that I'll never fully forgive you. That I'll always carry this anger, this hurt, inside me. I don't know if I can truly move forward without feeling like a part of me is still stuck in the past." Noah looked at me, his brow furrowing in a mixture of understanding and regret. He didn't speak for a long moment, and I could feel the tension in the air as he searched for the right words. Finally, he took a deep breath, and spoke with the quiet strength I had grown to admire. "I don't know if we can ever forget what happened, but I think that's not the point. The point is that we can keep going, we can try, even with all the pain. Even with all the hurt." I met his gaze, and something inside me shifted. He was right. We had already gone through so much together, so much pain and loss, that maybe the real strength didn't lie in erasing the past but in facing it, acknowledging it, and choosing to move forward. Together. After that conversation, things didn't magically fix themselves. But Noah and I both took concrete steps forward, small steps. It wasn't about perfection, and it certainly wasn't about forgetting what had happened. It was about rebuilding trust, piece by piece, day by day. There were days when the old wounds would flare up again, moments when the anger would surge, when I would remember the way Noah had walked away from me, and wonder if I could ever truly trust him. But there were also moments when the silence between us wasn't heavy with regret, but filled with a comfortable, quiet intimacy. We went on walks together, sat side by side in our favorite spots, and shared simple conversations about nothing and everything. We were finding our way back, and each moment, however small, felt like a victory. One night, as we sat on the couch in my apartment, our legs tangled together, Noah turned to me with an almost shy look on his face. "I'm glad we're doing this," he said quietly, the vulnerability in his voice more evident than I had ever heard it. "I'm glad we're trying. Even though it's hard." I smiled, my heart swelling with something I hadn't felt in so long. Peace. "Me too," I whispered. "Me too." As the weeks passed, the weight of our shared past slowly started to lessen, though we both knew that it would never be completely gone. But as I stood beside Noah in the park one evening, watching the last traces of sunlight fade behind the trees, I realized something profound. We didn't need to erase the past. The pain, the scars, the mistakes. They were part of us. Part of the journey we had been on together. But we didn't need to carry that weight any longer. We could choose a new path. Together. Noah stood beside me, his hand gently brushing against mine. A gesture that had once been full of hesitation but now felt like the most natural thing in the world. His eyes met mine, and I saw something there. Something that had always been there, even in the hardest moments. The unwavering love he had for me. "So, what's next?" I asked, my voice soft, but full of the hope that had slowly begun to take root inside me. Noah smiled, the warmth of it reaching his eyes. "I don't know, Ella. But I think we'll figure it out. We've been through so much, and we're still here. That's all that matters." And in that moment, I understood. The past didn't define us. What mattered was the present, the choices we made now, the steps we took together. As we walked away from the park, hand in hand, I felt the weight lift from my chest. I didn't have all the answers. We didn't have all the answers. But we had each other. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. Months passed, and the life Noah and I were building felt more real with each day. We found our rhythm, one that didn't rely on forgetting or erasing the past but on learning from it, growing from it. Our relationship wasn't perfect, and it never would be. But it was ours, forged in the fire of everything we had been through. One evening, as we sat together on the same bench by the lake, I looked at Noah with a quiet understanding. There was no more need for grand gestures or promises. We had already made those promises, in the quiet moments, in the words we didn't speak but knew were understood. "We've come a long way," I said, my voice full of warmth and finality. Noah nodded, his fingers gently brushing my hair from my face. "We have. And I wouldn't change a thing. Because we're here, and that's all that matters." We both looked out at the lake, the ripples reflecting the stars above. The future stretched out before us, full of unknowns, full of possibilities. But no matter what came, we would face it together. And that, at the end of the day, was all I needed to know.